Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to another episode on Northwoods Exploration. As always, my name is Jeremy, and as you can see, I am coming to you today from my home office, and we are going to talk about the 40 Smith and Wesson. Let's get to it, guys. Alright guys, so as I said, today we are going to talk about the 40 Smith and Wesson. This is a caliber that seems to have a cult-esque following, if you will. There are people that love it, there are people that hate it, there are people that are kind of in the middle and just simply don't care. Either way, this is a caliber that is still with us to this day, a caliber that has been with us in some shape, form, or fashion for really, I would say, probably the last 50 or 60 years. Now, to understand why I refer to the 40 Smith and Wesson as a cartridge born out of time, you saw that on the title slide to this video, we really need to start by talking about the history of the 40 Smith and Wesson, and by no means is this going to be comprehensive. You really have to go back to the 50s and 60s and its development, but I really want to pick up with its popularity and how it came to prominence. And for that, you really have to start in 1986 with the Miami FBI shootout. Several agents were injured. I think a couple of these guys were killed. Not going to go into great detail. By the way, if you want a very, very good video on this, check out Paul Harrell's video. Go to his channel. He's got a very good video that he put together on the 1986 FBI Miami shootout. But basically, the FBI came away from this situation looking at their tools of the trade, if you will, their 38 specials, and they realized, okay, we need something a little more potent. We need something with a higher capacity, and we need something that's going to be a little bit more powerful than what we've been carrying. And so when you get to 1987, this is when the testing really begins, and they looked at primarily 3 different cartridges. One was the 9mm, the other was the 45, and then the 10mm kind of slipped in the side door, so to speak. And the 10mm ended up taking the cake to the point that in 1989, the FBI actually went ahead and adopted the 10mm as their service caliber. Now, if you see me looking down here, my notes are on my computer right below the screen here. So it's the reason I keep looking down. But in 1986... 1989, the FBI adopted the 10mm as their primary cartridge. Now, they kept the 10mm in service until 1997. And in 1997, what ended up happening is the FBI adopted the 40 Smith and Wesson. And this pretty much came down to the simple fact that there were agents that could not handle the 10mm. I mean, frankly, folks, it's just like Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888 says, he'll say there's no such thing as a free lunch in physics. For every reaction, folks, the laws of physics dictate that there is an equal and opposite reaction. In other words, you send 650 foot-pounds of energy downrange, you also have 650 foot-pounds of energy coming right back at you. And so there were a lot of agents that had trouble handling the 10mm properly. So they adopted the 40 Smith and Wesson. Basically, this is how the 40 Smith and Wesson got the nickname 40 short and wimpy. Basically, it is a 10mm short. It's much less powerful, a lot less powerful than a 10mm, and it's a shorter bullet. It is a 10mm short, if you will. And the FBI adopted the 40 Smith & Wesson in 1997. And they kept this as their primary service cartridge until 2014 when they adopted the 9mm. And this kind of began the so-called downfall of the 40 Smith and Wesson. Now, that was a very quick rundown of the service history of the 40 Smith and Wesson. By no means is this comprehensive, but when you look at 2014, this is when the 40 Smith and Wesson really began to fall off in popularity. Now, I want to take a quick second and talk about my own personal history with the 40 Smith and Wesson. My first handgun was a Beretta PX4 Storm. It was the full-frame gun, full-size gun in 40 Smith and Wesson. It was also my first service weapon. I eventually ended up selling it and buying this. This is a Glock 22. This was my service weapon when I served as a deputy sheriff and also when I worked armed private security. Love the gun, but I will admit that's the only 40 that I have. And it's probably the only 40 that I'm going to have. In fact, if I had my time to do over, I would probably have gone with a Glock 17 Gen 3. Now, we'll get into some of the reasons why that is, but my own personal thought, my own personal opinion, take this into account when you're in the comments. These are my own thoughts and opinions. I think it's a great caliber. But I think, as I said in the title slide for this video, that the 40 Smith & Wesson is really a cartridge that was born out of time. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of the 40 Smith & Wesson. We'll start with the pros. And the first pro is simply ammunition availability. Ammo availability. When you look at a site such as Lucky Gunner, I think you can see a decent cross-section of what's out there. When you look at 40 Smith & Wesson, right now they have, at the time of the making of this video, they have 65 different currently they have 65 different types of 40 Smith & Wesson ammunition. You compare that to the 45, and they have 75 different types, and then 9mm obviously being the most popular caliber in the United States these days. They have 152 different types. Now, you look at 9mm versus 40, and you think, well, that's a huge disparity, but look at some of the other cartridges. For example, 380, they only have 43 different types. For 38 Special, they only have 31, and 357 Magnum, they only have 17 different types that are in stock. So when you look at 40 Smith & Wesson, what you find is, in comparison to other calibers, it's very available. Even during the pandemic, when ammo was scarce, I could find 40 Smith & Wesson most of the time. If they had 9mm or 45, they're going to have 40 Smith & Wesson as well. So the number one pro for 40 Smith & Wesson is the fact that ammunition is generally very available. The second pro, I think, is that it provides a balance between 9mm and 45. It provides a very good balance between 9mm and 45. Yes, there are always going to be people that are in the 9mm camp. There are always going to be people that are in the 45 ACP camp. But then you got these people that are in the middle. And if you want some of the agility, if you will, of a 9mm, but you also want a little bit heavier bullet, like what you could get with a 45, a 40 Smith & Wesson offers a very good and viable option. This leads me to my third pro, and my third pro is that with the right ammunition, 40 Smith & Wesson makes a very good gun for carry in the woods. It does. If you choose your ammunition wisely, this makes a great gun for woods carry. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go back to our slides. So when you look at a standard 40 Smith & Wesson, this is Winchester White Box, 165 grain, moving at 1,060 feet per second, has a muzzle energy of about 412 foot-pounds of energy. That's going to be your standard round. You're going to get about 400 to 420, give or take, across any standard 165 grain 40 Smith and Wesson load. But let's bump that up. Let's bump that up to Underwood 180 grain, moving 1,100 feet per second. This is a jacketed hollow point, and the muzzle energy comes out to 484 foot-pounds of energy. Well, now you're kind of coming into 45 ACP territory. You know, my Underwood 230 grain plus Ps for my 45 ACP, that's, according to Underwood, 511 foot-pounds of energy. You're kind of beginning to approach that 45 ACP range. Even if you go down to 155 grain, 40 Smith and Wesson, this is still Underwood, 1,300 feet per second. How much muzzle energy? 582 foot-pounds of energy. By comparison, what I carry when I'm in the woods in my 45 ACP and my Glock 21 is 185 grain plus Ps from Underwood. And that gets me approximately around the 600 mark. As far as foot-pounds of energy, about 600 foot-pounds of energy. You're getting up in those ranges now. So if anyone tells you it's impossible to carry a 40 Smith & Wesson in the woods because it's not potent enough, no. You haven't done your homework on your ammunition choices. Yeah, if you're going to go with 165 grain Winchester White Box FMJ, yeah, sure. You can get 9mm that goes that has those kind of velocities and energy levels. But if you actually do your homework for 40 Smith & Wesson, you can find some really, really great ammo choices that are going to give you very good protection in the woods. So the three pros are that ammo is greatly available. It provides a good balance for those that don't necessarily want 9mm or 40. Gives a nice balance. And then thirdly, if you're smart about your ammo choices, 40 Smith & Wesson actually has some really great options for personal protection and also for carrying in the woods. Now, those are my three pros. What about the cons? What do I see as kind of being on the other end of the spectrum? Well, I really have one big con that is overarching when it comes to the downfall of the 40 Smith & Wesson. And that is the simple fact that in our current climate, as far as what's out there on the market for ammunition choices and for guns, the 40 Smith & Wesson is really a cartridge that is caught in no man's land. It really is. It is a caliber, it is a cartridge that is trapped in no man's land. I think there are really two reasons for this. The first reason comes down to really the popularity of 9mm and its advancements in ammunition technology. You see, a lot of higher-end 9mm ammunition these days has the ability to equal or almost equal your standard 40 Smith & Wesson loads. Let me show you what I mean. So let's go back to our graphics here. So going back to that Winchester White Box 165 grain 40 Smith & Wesson, 1,060 feet per second, approximately 412 foot-pounds of energy. That's generally what you're going to get, 400 to 420 with your standard 165 grain load for 40 Smith & Wesson. Now let's compare that to 9mm. Let's look at Underwood, and I'm using Underwood as an example not because they sponsored this video. I'd love to be sponsored. Underwood, if you're watching my videos, I'd love for you to sponsor my videos. I'll take that. But I like their products, and I'm going to talk about the products that I like, that I believe in and work with. with Underwood 9mm plus P 115 grain bullets, you're moving at 1,250 feet per second, approximately 400 foot-pounds of energy. That's right on that cusp of your standard 40 Smith and Wesson load. You look at the 124 grain plus P from Underwood, once again, still 9mm. And I think 124 grain is probably your sweet spot with 9mm. 1,225 feet per second, 413 foot-pounds of energy. And when you go up to 147, you don't really gain a whole lot. 1125 feet per second, 414 foot-pounds of energy. Here's the point, guys. And this is really what it comes down to. A lot of your higher powered 9mm rounds, your premium 9mm cartridges, are really equaling your standard 40 Smith and Wesson. And that's a problem for 40 Smith and Wesson. You see, as 9mm bullet technology has increased, and there are better and more powerful 40 Smith and Wesson options. I know that that's true. I get it. But the bottom line, folks, is people aren't looking to kill a grizzly bear on their way to the grocery store. Plain and simple. The majority of people in this country that own handguns own a 9mm. The 9mm 9x19 or 9mm Parabellum, however you want to think of it, this is the most popular round in the United States. Probably around the world if I had to throw a guess at it. People don't need 500 foot-pounds of energy to drop a criminal trying to harm their family. You're not going to need 500 foot-pounds of energy for that. You're not dropping a grizzly bear. You're dropping a criminal. And the bottom line is a lot of people have adopted 9mm because of the cartridge choices that are out there. There are cartridge choices for that in 40, but the bottom line is the bullet technology has increased so much with 9mm, and it's so popular. People already own 9mm. Why do they want to have to go out and buy a 40? When their 9mm with proper ammo selection is more than sufficient. And this really leads me to the second, and this is really the final reason why the 40 Smith and Wesson is a round that is stuck in no man's land. And that is the simple fact that from law enforcement to military to even the civilian market, people have transitioned to really one of two camps, either 9mm or 45. That's the truth. Either they have transitioned to 9mm or they've transitioned over to 45. And that's just really the way things have gone. As I said, with the advancement of 9mm bullet technology, you have a lot of selections. 9mm is easier to shoot. Most people that I know learn to shoot on a 9mm. That's what they prefer. That's what they learned on. That's what they prefer. It's easy to shoot. Smaller frame shooters don't have any problems, and you have a great selection of ammunition at your disposal. On the other hand, you don't get more Americana than the 45 ACP. It's the American round. We've all seen the image of the soldier picking up the other soldier and carrying him off the battlefield while the soldier that's injured has his 1911 out, still giving it to the enemy. That's an iconic image. Folks, the 1911 was a gun that was built around the 45 ACP cartridge. You don't get more American than that. And so people have really migrated to one of two camps. 45 or 9mm. And I know there's a bunch of other cartridges that are between there. You know, 357 Magnum. I mean, on my hip right now today is a Smith and Wesson 640J frame chambered in 357 Magnum. I love 357 Magnum, but it's not the most popular round. Same thing about 10 millimeter. Is it more powerful than 45? Yep. Guess what? More people are carrying 45 ACP than 10 millimeter in the United States. Why? Easier to handle, easier to find the ammo. I'd love to have a 10 millimeter. Guess what? I can't find the ammo in my local area. I'm not buying one. Plain, simple, end of discussion. But this is what's happened, folks. You have people that have migrated between the two. They've chosen their camp. Either they're 9 millimeter or they're 45. They're in one camp or the other. And really and truly, 40 Smith and Wesson has fallen out of favor because the other two have really kind of taken its lunch money, taken its market share. I guess I'll go ahead and draw all of these conclusions in kind of like this. And this is the best way that I can kind of culminate everything that we've talked about. Do I love this gun? And by the way, for all you, all you range security officers, there's not even a mag in it. Don't worry. Do I love this gun? Yes, I do. This is a gun that has seen me through some very, very perilous times in my life. As a law enforcement officer, working as also a correctional deputy, working armed private security, even in my everyday life. Has this gun kept me safe and kept me alive? Yes. Do I love this gun? Yes, I do. But there are two reasons why I'm not going to carry this gun. Number one, if I have to use this in a defensive shooting, I don't want it to be taken away. It has great sentimental value. But you know the main reason? Because I have a good selection of other options. My Glock 17, great fighting gun. Mags interchangeable with my Glock 19. Ammo available everywhere. My 45 goes with me when I'm in the woods. When I go on an out west hunt with my buddy Jordan here in a few years, that's what's most likely going to be on my hip. Where does my 40 Smith and Wesson fall into this mix? Well, the same place my Winchester Model 1894 falls. In the safe, collecting dust as a weaponry relic of the past. It's not that it's a bad gun. It's not that it's a bad caliber. But it's, as I said, a cartridge that has been born out of time. It is a cartridge that exists, that is stuck in no man's land. It's a gun that I just simply don't have a need for in my life. Frankly, if I didn't have sentimental value attached to it, I wouldn't own a 40 Smith and Wesson at all. It's not that it's a bad gun, not that it's a bad caliber, not that it's a bad cartridge. It is simply a cartridge that was born out of time. And I just don't have a need for it. Alright guys, so that is going to bring our video to a close. I want to hear from you. One of the things I love is engaging with you guys, so comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Do you carry 40 Smith and Wesson? Do you like 40 Smith and Wesson? Do you not like it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I want to hear from you. And by the way, while you're down there, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Last time I checked, 99% of you are not subscribed that are watching my videos. I need you to subscribe to the channel so we can help grow this channel. Just a little bit of news on the channel. I have started an Instagram account, link in the description below. I'm going to be posting a lot of my photos to Instagram that I take on all my different hikes and hunts and journeys. I got tons of content to upload on there. But yeah, I want to hear from you. And by the way, put some suggestions for future videos. I'm going to be doing a video probably next on the 357 Magnum. Love that cartridge. Love my 357 Snubby. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. And as always, don't forget to come join the adventure. Get out there in the woods, enjoy it, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care.